Hello, this is Naudi Aguilar at Functional Patterns, and I'm proud to announce our latest FP innovation, the Functional Patterns Decompression Tank. I invented this tank for the sole purpose of creating some kind of anti-gravitational force on a body that's constantly bombarded by gravity. Just think about every time you take a step, anytime you go in your car, anytime you're anywhere in your life and you're moving around, think about how the force of gravity is constantly pushing you down. And this is another thing I want you to think about. How often do you get a break from gravity? That's the real question you need to ask yourself. Are you ever really getting a vacation from gravity? And if you really think about it, you really never do. Even if you're laying supine on your bed when you go to sleep, you've never really actually given your joints the opportunity to move in the opposite direction of the way gravity pushes them down every single day. Now, this tank that I have invented was stemmed from the idea of regular sensory deprivation chambers where you're laying in buoyant water. As many of you guys have probably seen on the Joe Rogan experience, where Joe Rogan and other people talk about laying down in this tank with this really buoyant water. I found that to be fairly beneficial. I tested that concept for a while, and I realized that there was some counterintuitive aspects to it that really weren't beneficial for the body. I would lay in that tank, and since I was never grounded to anything and I was having my spine pushed into very awkward positions, I found myself actually getting my muscles even tighter than what I felt prior to going inside the tank. So what I did with the concept is I thought of, okay, what if I got the same benefits of being in that, in that Epsom salt and that flotation, and I just flipped it right side up? Well, if I flip it right side up, now I don't have that water pushing my lumbar spine up and exacerbating the hyperlordosis. Actually, what I have is if I fix myself to the ground, now I have an entire substance, the water, pulling my entire body upward. This is an entirely new way of looking at anti-gravitational therapy, of decompression. Most time when you're dealing with things that relate to distraction or flexion, anything like that, within the field of spinal movement or hip movement, typically you're finding yourself with machines doing some kind of flexion, distraction, maybe a little bit of pulling in certain areas, but the issue is that the whole body is not involved. On these decompression tanks, the Functional Patterns Decompression Tank, you're going to find yourself with your entire body getting lengthened vertically against the force of gravity, actually giving yourself a vacation from that force that's bombarding you on a regular basis. Now, to start, what we can actually look at in terms of your shoulder compressions, that most of the time, most of you who are dealing with some kind of a shoulder problem, most of you actually are dealing with a shoulder depression. I know everybody's telling you, if you look at most trainers, most physical therapists, they're telling you you're dealing with internally rotated and elevated shoulders. I told this to everybody for years, and it's turned out that I'm wrong. Most people are actually dealing with depressed shoulders, and it's because gravity is constantly pushing them down, and our body doesn't have the tensile strength to keep the shoulders up. So what does this tank do? It actually creates a decompressive force to actually allow the shoulders to go upward, and it's actually going to that will actually in turn help decompress the shoulder socket. If we move further down into the spine, we're going to tend to find the exact same benefits. As you walk, as you do any motions, the spine generally tends to get compressed. Your discs get more compression. Your spine, anybody who's dealing with degenerative disc disease, gravity is constantly taking its toll, placing downward pressure onto the spine. And what this decompression tank does is, based upon how you're strapped and how the buoyant water lifts you up, you are going to create a decompression in the spine. The hips are going to also follow along for the ride. Not only the hips, but if we look at the pelvis to the rib cage relationship, most people in general, the spacing between the ribs and their pelvis is not very big. And what we can do through this tank, just by simply just standing there, we're going to create some length through that pelvis and through the rib cage, just based upon the buoyant water lifting you up once again. If we travel down into the knee joint, we're going to find ourselves also creating a decompression in the knee joint. For those of you who tend to have problems bending your knee or dropping down into a squat, oftentimes that can be locally figured out, or at least codified to some degree, or figured out or analyzed just based upon how much compression you're getting in the knee joint itself. So if I tend to have a great compression in my knee because my knee doesn't get proper balance because my quads and hamstrings don't work properly, my femur and my tibia, my shin bone or my thigh bone are going to tend to almost jam together, and that's going to prevent some knee bending. Well, if you are in this decompression tank, little by little, you're going to create a length based upon, once again, that buoyant water lifting you upward, and within time, that's what will give you a greater capacity to create better knee flexion. And we can extend that down into the ankle joint as well, just based upon the fact that the ankle is strapped up, and the water again is pulling everything upward once again. as you guys probably know by now, you've seen our results. When it comes to looking at a scoliosis, a kyphosis, a faulty gait cycle, or dealing with people in pain, you guys know what functional patterns is about. We've pretty much staked our claim with regard to essentially rehabbing people, not only rehabbing their bodies out of pain, but also rehabbing their bodies out of dysfunctional movement, which actually causes the pain. This tool is simply here as a contraption to help us push ourselves towards the path of functionality, and getting a break from gravity at some point is going to be a really helpful thing for anybody who's trying to achieve functionality. What we do with compression, with longitudinal compression, what you guys always hear me talking about, is going to be extremely important when it comes to figuring out the functionality of your body. So this tank, I'm thoroughly proud to present this. I myself don't stand. I don't put my name behind any product that doesn't work. Anything that's out there, I've tested hundreds of different products of all sorts of different types, and I will not put my name behind any product that's not going to work substantially. And I will tell you right now, I'm not going to invent anything that's not going to give you measurable changes with your body. We've been testing this, and the people that have been using it are already feeling substantially better. So I look forward to putting this out on the market, and look for it on our website. We will actually have a description link on this video. So I hope you guys found this video to be informative. Stay on the lookout for future FP innovations, because this is not our only invention that we will be putting forth here in the future. Once again, this is Naudi Aguilar here at Functional Patterns, reminding you to think and train intentionally and not habitually. Take care.